Hello and welcome to Daily Politics on Trust TV, where we bring you perspectives on issues around politics, policy and governance. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for joining us. First, on the tidbits tonight, the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission along Port Harcourt Road in Imo State came under attack in the early hours of Monday as gunmen invaded the office. According to reports, the hoodlums, numbering more than 10, had attacked the facilities of the electoral body at 3 a.m., according to a statement released by the Commission through its Commissioner of Information and Voter Education, Festus Okoye. The attack affected part of the building occupied by the Election and Party Monitoring EPM Department, and one official utility vehicle was burnt. This is the third attack on the Commission's facilities in Imo State in less than 2 weeks, following earlier attacks on its offices in Olu local government area on the 1st of December and the attack on Oru West local government area on the 4th of December 2022.
What our own strategy too. So they now give them a whole chase. So we are able to neutralize 3, recover 3 AK, and recover 3 pump actions with some of their IEDs, and in fact about 4 of their vehicles. So these are the 3 being neutralized. Now we not stop there. We now went ahead again. We have been able to arrest 2 alive with gunshot or gun wounds.
You see, the issue here is not just banditry. It is trying to understand the motive behind the action and why is INEC the target. And if you collaborate this with events of the past, where I have continuously said that what is happening in Imo State is politically contrived. Some people who think that they can win elections, yet they don't want elections. How would they then win? INEC does not need this distraction at this point and stage of our elections. The ones that flew with bullet wounds, and the police is ever committed. Other security agencies, sister agencies are also committed. So my assurance is that we will have a very peaceful environment for Christmas. And God's willing, because everything we do on this earth is the will of God that will prevail. And God, this is a holy period, the period that the Lord Jesus Christ was born. That anointing and blessing and the holiness of the period will bring peace to Imo State.
All right, now still talking about attacks, the campaign office of Mohamed Barade, People's Democratic Party candidate for the 2023 governorship election in Gombe State, was also set on fire on Monday. Although details of the attack are still sketchy, the PDP has blamed it on the ruling All Progressives Congress, an allegation which it denied. According to the Director General, Press Affairs to Governor Inuwa Yahaya, Ismaila Uba Misili, he says that the PDP were just looking for cheap publicity. He added that the opposition was in no way a threat to the APC, adding that it had already consolidated its support base in the state and is not worried about losing the election next year.
This is the campaign office of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in Gombe State, Mohamed Jibrin Barde, set on fire in the early hours of Monday. A security guard who was on duty when the incident happened narrates his experience.
Abun da na sani dai mun zo mun ga wuta yana tashi wannan wayoyin suna ta sparking to kawai sai muka fito muka.
We saw flames and electric spark. We opened the door and saw the thugs numbering more than 50 with cutlasses and sticks.
Da wuka da ardina da sanduna suna saya nan gurin da acid anan abunan sun wurgara nan gurin to aka harbi tear gas da aka.
The policeman was firing tear gas. He was tired and ran away. The thugs ran away when more police officers were deployed. In the aftermath of the attack, Barde and leaders of the PDP in Gombe State, including former Governor Ibrahim Dankombo and Senator Bayero Nafada, were at the site to assess the damage. In a press conference on Monday, the Barre campaign organization blamed the ruling All Progressives Congress APC for the attack.
We are appealing to our teaming supporters, well-wishers, and all sympathizers of the PDP as a party to please hold their peace and remain calm and not to take the laws into their hands, because we are taking every appropriate measure officially to address these issues.
I think there is a third or a fourth time when this type of thing has happened. That means somebody somewhere is encouraging this to happen. And the relevant evidence that is supposed to stop this has done nothing about it.
The Director, Press and Public Affairs to Governor Inwaya Ismaila Obamisili denies the allegations, saying the PDP was just looking for cheap publicity. The Nigeria Police Gombe State Command vowed to investigate the attack and urge parents to warn their children against political violence.
We will investigate. Good day.
Stakeholders say incidents like this call for the security architecture in the state to be strengthened ahead of the 2023 general elections in order to guarantee a free, fair and accepted exercise. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
Now, finally, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Atiku Abubakar, says he will initiate programs that will take millions of youths and women out of poverty if elected in the 2023 general elections. The PDP candidate stated this during his campaign rally in Lafia, Nasarawa State. Take a look.
The PDP presidential candidate, who was delighted with the crowd that gathered to support his ambition, said many Nigerians are living in poverty and needed to be taken out of such squalid condition. He specifically explained that majority of the youths and women who constitute a greater number of the total population are out of jobs, adding that there is need for the incoming administration to look into their plight with a view to bringing succor to them.
I also want to use this opportunity to reiterate our commitment to making sure that our young men and women have jobs to do and have work to do when we come into office. That is why we set aside $10 billion so that we can pump this money into small, medium enterprises for our young men and women. Let me also announce that we will link up Nasarawa with all other neighboring states as far as our road infrastructure is concerned.
He maintained that by so doing, insecurity and other social vices would be reduced in the country. On their part, National Chairman of PDP, Yochia Ayu, and Chairman Presidential Campaign Council, Governor Udom Emmanuel of Akwa Ibom State, said the North Central region has been a home of the PDP, and as such, Nasarawa State and other states in the zone would massively support the party in 2023 elections.
I don't need to come here and campaign because the whole of North Central, where I come from, is not going to disgrace me. Every state in North Central is going to be won by the People's Democratic Party. Atiku Abubakar will get his highest votes from the North Central zone.
In Nasarawa today, the kind of crowds, the kind of reception, the kind of joy we are seeing in Nasarawa State today means that Nasarawa is PDP and PDP is Nasarawa. I'm convinced that when it's time to announce the result of Nasarawa will be announced first, as PDP has won Nasarawa.
The governorship candidate and party chairman in the state, Francis Orogu, and David Ombugadu, both assured of the party's victory in all positions in the state and the country. In attendance of the rally were former Senate President Bukola Saraki and Yakubu Dogara, Governor Aminu Tambuwal of Sokoto State, former Information Minister Labaran Maku, and ex-PDP Board of Trustees Chairman Walid Jibrin, among others.
Well, there you have it. Sound bites from presidential campaign rally of the People's Democratic Party in Nasarawa earlier today. Now, in the studio with us is Dr. Salahuddin Kashim, a conflict advisor and security analyst, and also joined by Simiye Michael. He is the executive director, Dean Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us on Daily Politics tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, let me start with you, Dr. Salahuddin. You've seen some of the videos that we played earlier, and two of those videos actually talked about violence that we've seen in Gombe and in Imo State. Specifically, let's start with the ones targeting INEC offices in the southeast and maybe a few of others in other parts of the country. How would you react to this, or I would say, how would you describe these attacks and how they have continued unabated?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think it is first of all important to describe the attacks as baseless and a clear demonstration of increased intolerance within the political space. Between February 2019 and today, there has been about 45 various attacks on INEC facilities. There has been about 86 soldiers who have been killed and mutilated, about 64 police officers, 2 correctional service officers, NDLE and SADs. This whole suggests to us very clearly that 2023 is going to be entirely different. And it is going to be entirely different because of the recipe of conflict that is actually brewing up. And particularly the attacks on INEC facility suggest very clearly that we have a group of faceless individuals who are particularly demonstrating their disruptive and destructive power and capability to be able to twist the elections in strategic locations. And the essence basically is to be able to ensure that there is some level of rerun or some kind of integrity challenge or legitimacy issue with the elections. And obviously this is the one we have seen. The 45 attacks that I told you about is in 14 states. And of course, there are also locations where INEC facilities are not attacked yet, but obviously there are also flashpoints where potentials might happen. And I think security agencies at this point must also deploy their 3 Ps to be able to control the threat analysis in election security management. One would be how they deal with the issue of personnel, the second is property, and the third one is about process. All of these components you must put in before, during, and after the general elections. But if you look at it in entirety, it is not something you can wish away. It tells you very clearly that these guys are very coordinated, they are very systematic, and they know exactly what they are looking for. And I can tell you for one reason, that it is a clear demonstration of the inability to actually rig election physically anymore because of the technology that is now being introduced. So there is this approach to begin to undermine pre-election activities in various locations. And the second thing is the elite capture of the society, where statesmen and those who are politicians are beginning to see it as a strategy, okay? And of course, there is one thing that is going to play out very clearly in 2023. One is the weaponization of ethnicity, which is what we are seeing in the southeast playing out. The second is the weaponization of poverty, which is largely going to play out in the north. And we are going to see weaponization of illiteracy. And that in itself is the reason why we must constantly provide some level of consistent voter education as we run into the election. Right, but most importantly is that what is going on is actually disturbing.
All right, well, let's get, excuse me, let's get your own perspectives, Simiye. Why have we seen this heightened attack in recent times, in your own opinion?
Yeah, well, it's good that I think for the first time in a very long time, even those of us on the field, we now have huge confidence in what INEC can deliver. And with the use of technology, I think everybody now is scared, especially the politicians. And my colleague have said, you see, the tension now is, looking for every means to undermine the competence and delivery activity of INEC. Because rigging the election by number now, unlike before, is terribly going to be difficult. So dislodging and ensuring that there is there are instabilities, that might be strategies they are going to be working around. I think the major concern here is just to see what can we do to build the security capacities, because that's just going to be one of the greatest saving grace that we as a country, because we're not seeing INEC as the focus of attack. It's a collective attack on the integrity of our country. So what will save us as a nation is to see how the capacity of the security instruments can be built to not only challenge when these things happen, but to ensure that there are, I don't know how to put it strategically. We need to block the possibility of them, coming to the front burner.
Okay, but we've seen, some of these attack on INEC offices, specifically in the southeastern part of the country. Would you also say that that's also part of, what you explain about, the fear or the attempt to weaken the capacity of INEC to deliver a credible election? Or is it more to do with the IPOP agitation in that part of the country, and perhaps an attempt to undermine democracy in that part of the country, such that the Southeast is not participating in the electoral processes?
Yeah, it's an ideology against electoral processes. And of course, from what you have highlighted, there is a connection to it. Because you see, this group have been hijacked by criminals and criminal elements. And of course, like we mentioned very clearly, Nigeria is actually a conflagration of tribesmen, who came together to form a state. And of course, you know too well that a lot of people are easily attuned to the ethnicity or ethnic group where they belong to. So what you see playing out basically is one, an ideology against electoral processes, two, a communication approach to tell the state that, look, there is a need for negotiation and have conversation as we get into the elections. I remember that in Anambra during the elections, even up until the eve of that election, there were communication and tendencies that the election was not going to hold. But there were some strategic informal powers who were able to engage constructively at different levels, vertically and horizontally, and use various channels, most of them through the back door. And of course, those who have access to be able to communicate to these guys and say, look, for you to be able to get your negotiations very clear. And of course, doing this would also continue to provide legitimacy to the state to have termed IPOB a terrorist organization. And of course, to be able to have that deviation and departure, that it was important for them to be able to now come back and say, look, this is not the way to go. So that actually communication really helped. But I think as we go into the election, it is important for us to be able to do two things. One is to understand the psychology of an average fellow in the Southeast. And I tell you, a number of them are already tired with the fatigue of activities of these guys because the level of fatalities has actually become so high. The second one is that it has adversely affected the economy. And I think it is important that at the moment where fatigue had set in, that there can be some state apparatus who can then move in and use some kind of soft approach to begin to engage from now. It is
IPOP has denied having anything to do with attack on INEC officers. Well, while we are not going to be able to verify that, whether it's true or not, do you think that there's a possibility that perhaps some politicians are taking advantage of the whole IPOP thing in the Southeast to, perhaps attack their own opponents in some way, maybe indirectly?
For me, everywhere in the world, there has been need for agitations at one point or another by, you know, basic groups within society. But when, you know, criminal elements hijack these agitations, you always see the, you know, the major stakeholders with, you know, that leads those agitations, this, ensuring that they stay distance away from criminal activities that people who have hijacked, you know. But one thing is, when we start agitations, you know, globally, we only have control of how we start it. Unfortunately, you know, this also play out during the purposeful HENSAS, you know, exercise. At the end of the, we always have people who have bad intentions, you know, infiltrating your good agenda. And unfortunately, even when you later now deny that this is not your activity, but these people already have a safe haven, you know, a safe coverage within the purview of your activity. So it will be difficult for IPOB to continue to deny, but the truth is that even if they are not legitimately the one, you know, behind these exercises, people have found safe space within what they have declared. For me, we've moved from a lot of challenges. There were times in Nigeria that we're not talking about, we're not just talking about attack on facilities, we're talking about attack on potential, you know, candidates who are, you know, the overnight they've just been slaughtered and killed, and investigation, and nothing will happen. Those years are beginning to reduce, even though we still have such experiences. For me, I think, because one of the greatest things our organization is even bothered about is the integrity of every election that is beyond just winning.
Exactly. So, I mean, how will this, I mean, affect the integrity of the poll at the end of the day? So, if a lot of violence we see ends up, you know, putting a lot of fear in people, how will it undermine the credibility of the poll?
There are going to be over 89 million voters going to be voting for over 1,400 constituency averagely, and I tell you that there are strategic approaches to undermine the legitimacy of any regime that will come in, and of course undermine the integrity of this particular process. And that is the reason why an integrity infrastructure must be put in place from now on. Unfortunately, we have a system that is not very proactive in reasoning, and that is not very proactive in thinking. We always like knee-jerk approach, and of course it is because we want to be very opportunistic. By the time the election is just a few weeks at that time, then of course a lot of security agencies will begin to ask for some kind of open check to be able to do some kind of strategic response to things like this. Early warning had suggested that 2023 was going to be very violent. And of course, this is not because we are prophets of doom. It is because if you are a student of revolutionary theory, you would have seen a number of indicators suggesting that. And of course, there are emerging wings of groups, okay, who are now beginning to think that they want a new order for the country. And that in itself is actually one of the things that is actually very scary. Because if we don't tame, and you cannot wish that particular group away, because it's a group of young minds who are beginning to think that, look, it is time to take Nigeria back, okay? And of course, you have on the flip side, a traditional power holders in the country who also believe that they have the constituent right to be able to sustain the power block. And I tell you one thing, power is not a la carte, okay? You don't cross your leg on a breakfast table and power is served. No, people contest and struggle for power. Unfortunately, we live in a community or in an environment where contestation is actually not done with ideologies. Contestations are done deploying all manner of illegal infrastructure.
So where do we draw the line here? You know, you talk about power is not served a la carte. I mean, it's kind of re-echoing what one of the presidential candidates said a few days ago, and then it went viral on social media, became more like a controversy where he talks about, you know, grabbing it and running away with it. It sounds like someone is grabbing ballot box and all that. So where do we draw the line between trying to really canvass for votes, you know, passionately and all that, and then at the end of the day, doing it you know,
within the ambit of the law.
Within the ambit of the law, you know, as the rule dictates.
The lack of ideology in our political space has actually crippled the system in such a way that, you see, an average Nigerian does not vote for what can change. An average Nigerian is just voting for, you know, this is what everybody is saying. Unlike, you know, just take a sample of our politicians. None of them has, I'm not sure we have plenty of them who have stayed in the same political, you know, party in the last, you know, since our new democracy has begun. Everybody is jostling. If you fail here, they move here. If they fail here, they move here. Ask an average Nigerian politician, what is the particular ideology of their party? They can't even present anything to you.
How many Nigerians actually belong to political parties?
So now, when you see our Nigerian campaigns, and then you see crowd I used to tell people that you don't judge the crowd attending a political campaign as a supporter of that party. An average Nigerian needs to attend political parties, not because I'm a member, simply because I want to listen to the manifesto, the ideology of this party. What are they bringing on the table? That will form my own judgment. I have to attend Labour Party, I have to attend PDP, I have to attend APC, and the rest of them for me to be able to choose. But the identification with a particular party, attending whatever meeting they have, in Nigeria automatically suggests that that's the party you belong to. So if you see 10,000 people attending a rally for a particular party, they are the one that, you know, is projected to have the largest crowd, simply because we don't even know how political parties or political ideologies drive conversation during elections. We still have a long way to go.
Yes, so and I really like for us to talk about whether or not our politicians are driving the conversations or focusing on the real issues from what we have seen, you know, in these campaigns, the verbal attacks and the rest of them. How is that also going to influence, you know, or I would say, how is that influencing? Let me not say going to influence, because already we are seeing that seemed to be an influence on the kind of attacks that we're seeing on social media, and then eventually sometimes even physical attacks.
You know, the issue is that unfortunately in African traditional society, we always have this adage that says that it is only an empty barrel that always makes noise. Because there is no content to actually engage, and because they know within themselves that they can no longer be trusted by anybody. So political rallies have turned to entertainment grounds where people just go and dance, and then of course they use snide words and pass words like javelin, throw comments, and use them to lacerate their opponents. And that for me is an unfortunate situation where we have actually come from. And like you mentioned, our political party structure had been balkanized, okay? And that is because people, look, you can see one individual who actually attends all the political rally, not because he believes in anything, it's for economic purposes, okay? Because, I mean, you are just being nice when you said it's just for economic reason, because if they mobilize him here, he's giving 5,000 here, so he just sees it as a largesse. So people who use that as a yardstick to measure popularity are actually not doing themselves a lot of good. But also, it is a justification for them to perpetrate whatever thing they want to do eventually. And that is the reason why the economic infrastructure creeping into the political space has now become largely one of the biggest concerns that we need to pay a lot of attention to. The only thing that drives violence is actually economic infrastructure, because it's about what people bring to the table, it's about what they drive, it's about what interests them. And I tell you one thing, governors in this country, they are emperors. Unfortunately, we always put the president on the stake and then of course want to hang him because a lot of things are not working. 75% of state failure in this country, you can trace it to government at subnational level.
All right, well, we'll talk more on the governors, but that will be after this short breather about our politicians and the role that they play in shaping the narrative and the direction of our political process in the country. Join us again.
Nigerians, elections are here again. Let us shun violence. Let us play the game according to the rules. Do not be a thug. Say no to violence. Let's rise and defeat violence, crime, and sabotage against the peace of our nation. Nigeria is the only country we have. We must do everything to keep it united. We must avoid any act that promotes hate and disintegration. Say no to separatist movement, terrorism, fake news, hate speech, religious bigotry, and any act that tends to divide us as a nation. Watch out for strange gatherings and suspicious movements. Restrict access to sensitive documents and data, the disclosure of which may damage national security. Educate your staff and family, particularly on measures to safeguard information and report security breaches. Apply relevant legal security guidelines to protect yourself and your neighbors. Due to misinformation and wrong choices, some idle persons resort to vices in their greed to get rich quick. They resort to kidnapping, killings for rituals, and other heinous crimes. Avoid wrong use of the social media. Before you broadcast that false message, think twice. Ask whether it will promote peace or violence. For safety at home, still be security conscious. Educate your household on safety tips. Report all suspicious movements and persons to the security agencies nearest to you. Be a good citizen. Be patriotic. To pass security information, please call 0813-222-2105, 0915-339-1309, 0908-837-3514, or send a mail to dsspr@dss.gov.ng. This message is from the Department of State Services, DSS.
All right, thank you for staying with us. If you are just joining, you're watching Daily Politics on Trust TV. You can do well to follow the conversation across all our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and also watch us live on YouTube. We have in the studio Dr. Salahuddin Hashim. He's a conflict advisor, and also Shemiye Michael. He's the executive director, Dean Initiative, here in the studio, talking about the violence in the 2023, ahead of the 2023 general elections. Now, one of the other issues that is of concern is the level of tolerance that we are seeing from among politicians at the subnational level. As a matter of fact, a lot happens at the subnational level. We just saw a video about Gombe State, where the headquarters of the opposition party was burnt. We've heard about attacks in Kaduna. We've heard about attacks in Borno. The PDP rally campaign train was attacked in Borno. We've also heard about these attacks in Zamfara, and some other states. What would you say about the level of tolerance here? And this is all happening despite the peace pact that politicians have assented to.
Yeah, people sign peace pact with their hands, not with their hearts. And that is the unfortunate part of it, because you just go to a public function and you smile to camera, and of course you sign off the paper, but your heart is actually deliberate about what you want to do. And of course also because at subnational level, you have people who have little searchlights beamed on them, and of course they have all the resources available. I can tell you that on an annual basis, there are about 242 billion naira that goes into security votes. Governors take a lot of these monies. And of course, when you have that kind of money, for instance, in a state, a governor takes $1 billion on a monthly basis for 4 years. And if he's in the office for 8 years, he takes for 8 years. That's a lot of money. You can run your political enemy out of town you can build militia. So it's actually the paradox of plenty. The more money you put into security, the larger the scale of insecurity. And what does that tell you? It tells you that there are merchants and entrepreneurs who are actually benefiting from the chaos. And that is the reason why you see this systematic attacks going on. And of course, we know too well that there is a level of transition of manual voting. Of course, our election is still manual, irrespective of the introduction of technology. It's just the nuances that differ. There are also some capability challenge from the side of security agencies in terms of readiness, in terms of how much they put a situation room in place, and how they also transit policing from the existing platform on the ground to cyber security. And I tell you, what you are seeing is just on the ground, but you are going to see a lot of cyber attacks as we go into the election. And finally is the fact that we are seeing a number of negligence also happening in Kaduna, in Birnin Gwari, for instance. The Ansaru had issued a declaration that there should not be any political activity in that particular region. Nobody is actually talking about it. No proactive measure. You have about 40 communities that are within the control of non-state armed groups. What exactly are we doing now to be able to liberate those communities so that the election can actually happen? We are not doing anything. And then, of course, when we get to the election, we start running helter-skelter. I think it is important that we are more strategic, that we are more proactive, and we are more deliberate.
All right. Well, Shemi, you talked about merchants, people who live off some of these things, the violence and everything. Are they invincible? And doesn't the law spells out what should be done with those people?
Unfortunately, the law, let me not say the law doesn't work here, but largely we have seen that the instrument of the laws itself does not even respect the law in this country. So, and law, the observation of law come with a lot of inspiration. It has to be demonstrated, it has to be practical. People have to be used as scapegoat for other people to learn that don't go near this because this is going to happen to you. But when a lot of people, do these things and nothing happens to them, it tells a very good story of the fact that if I do it, nothing will also happen. And when we talk about capacity is not the ability, it's not the lack of ability. It is the lack of resources to put the ability to use. So our police actually have the capacity in terms of willingness. But the truth is that the resources are in the pocket of few that others see. And, when I see the kind of luxury the people who do not do the work enjoy, and looking at me that is put at the front burner, suffering and possibly going to die, it just makes sense for me not to risk my life to, do a lot of things and allow those who are with the resources to continue to enjoy their family. I listen to politicians on the TV, on the radio, and I'm just like, what's this? Nobody is talking about what the country suffers. Nobody is talking about what they're bringing to the table. Everybody is talking about how stupid their opponent is, how they have 3 wives, how they go following girlfriends, and how is that a business? But that's exactly what Nigerians want.
But Nigerians are Nigerians really pressing for some of these things? Are they really making demands of some of this?
So sorry. Before you just go, we don't have a culture of holding people leading us accountable. In fact, Nigerians themselves make fun with these stories. In fact, they just know we're not serious. Unfortunately, to say that, and that's why they've continued to ride on our vulnerability. It's just sad.
Right.
Well, the office of the citizen is actually the biggest office in this country. And unfortunately, even the citizens...
On paper, is it?
On paper, you understand? It's actually the biggest office. But unfortunately, even our citizens don't actually know that. And that is exactly what the average politician want to see happen. Ignorance is actually a weapon in the hand of state actors to be able to continue to undermine citizens, because the less you know, of course, the better for you. And of course, they continue to exploit that ignorance to their own advantage. And I'll tell you one thing very quickly. It's the fact that we have a system that has undermined that office of citizen for so long. And that is why it is important at this point to be able to use social charter, social contract as a weapon to negotiate what governance should look like. Citizens a lot of the time are interested in what comes up. But unfortunately, our resilience is actually our greatest weakness. Because we are strong, we can withstand every situation. And no wonder the New York Times concluded and said that, look, Nigerians are the most happiest people on earth. You know, that they are always suffering and smiling. And of course, that concept concluded and said, look, the reason why it is so is because we live in an hopeless environment. You know, and unfortunately, that is the situation. So social charter and the absence to use it as a weapon to negotiate and make demands are always not there.
Good enough that you talk about this social charter. We've seen several town hall meetings and all of that. Would you say that we are doing any better this time around with engaging with our political, I would say, aspirants or candidates running for elections? Are we doing any better than we have done in the past?
We are not there yet, because it is still the same thing. And of course, those who are actually promoting those town hall meetings, and of course, that was what one of the presidential candidates said, that they are just using it to market. Okay, for marketing purposes. And of course, even those who are in the business of branding have also seen those platforms as opportunity to engage. But most importantly is that if you want to sign a social contract, and that also is actually the fallacy of the Constitution of Nigeria in itself ab initio. We, the people of the Federal Republic, have agreed and done A, B, C, and D. Unfortunately, at what point did the entire people actually agreed to all of those conditionalities that we have actually outlined in the Constitution? But because we run a representative democracy, we bequeathed our own power to the Parliament. And we said, look, the Parliament can go sit and represent our interests, and whatever thing they say on our behalf, we agree. Unfortunately, parliamentarians have now gotten there, and the oversight has become very weak. The ability to make law has almost become very zero. As a matter of fact, and to be very modest, the 9th Assembly has become, is actually one of the most neutral parliaments since we returned to democracy some 23 years ago, because there has been no deliberate effort by the parliament to be able to institutionalize governance. And what we have seen is that they have used the Parliament as an opportunity to continue to expand all manner of situation that has actually deepened our own current situation. So to get us out of the doldrums.
Would it be fair really to put it on the 9th Assembly, the National Assembly? I mean, you have state assemblies at the subnational level. Just yesterday or earlier today, we heard how the state assemblies are stalking, or I would say are holding to ransom the constitutional amendment that is ongoing, which is, you know, aimed at even helping some of those states.
Absolutely. I mean, don't mention the Parliament generally, because the Parliament has the constitutional mandate to be able to ensure that they shape governance. But unfortunately, they have actually become an extended wing of either the president or governor's office. I have seen cases, one case in Okiti, where the governor went and presented the budget and walked to the chamber where the speaker sat and took the gavel and actually passed the budget himself. And those are the kind of caricature that we see that governance has actually turned into, and they have actually turned the Parliament into an extended office. And that, for me, is actually where our rights, where we bequeathed to the Parliament, failed. And they failed us in return because they didn't allow that word, we the people, to actually prevail. And of course, in setting up political infrastructure in this country, there are a lot of indicators that actually suggest that the people actually have the right. If you want to create a platform that does not have the vibrancy, let the issue of independent candidacy now prevail. I can wake up tomorrow and say, look, I'm not riding on any political party, and I want to win an election, and because I think I am popular, and people listen to me a lot on Trust TV, that I can then, so you then provide legitimacy and integrity to that process, and you see that happen in other places. But those people you see at town hall meetings are not there yet, because a lot of issues on the table are still not driving the conversation, and that for me is where we are going.
All right. Well, Shemie, the issue of insecurity is major. It's big on the table as we approach the 2023 general elections. How can we strengthen our security architecture? How can we protect the democracy in this country? Because this is about the democracy in the country. So if you have regions, if you have places where elections cannot be held, that's a major problem. If the credibility of our elections cannot be guaranteed by INEC. That's a big problem. So how can we help INEC, in this sense, to conduct a free and fair, credible election?
Yeah, I think we need to start finding a way to de-emphasize transactional, politics. The moment whatever everybody wants is just money and nothing. So if you take the parliament into consideration, even if they see that this is a policy or a law that is going to be of benefit to the people, the moment the bargain in terms of money does not favor them, they are going to be bent on holding it to ransom. Because the only language an average Nigerian in every position possibly understand is money. And it takes we work at the community level. One of the greatest error is putting every attention at the center. Yeah. Okay, at the subnational, both state and the local government, these are the two stages that are most crucial, in terms of social development to the people. Constitutionally, there are certain things that, are bequeathed to the local government, constitutional state government, and these are even the governance system that are more closer to the people. But ask an average people who lives within the local government. Everything is on the federal. And I don't know when Buhari is going to visit any community that is, be attended to. So security reduced to federal. I don't know. We for a long time, Thanks Clean Foundation does a lot of stuff around policing in this country. For a long time, we actually have been running away from state policing. And honestly, we travel all over the world. This thing,
but it's one of the issues before the state assemblies that they have refused to.
That's what I'm saying. It's transactional because whoever is bringing these agendas to the table, if you don't have enough finance to push it, whoever is going to vote a yes in most of the bills we have is already looking, especially when a bill is popular. And they know that it's at stake with a lot of people. Whoever is going to push that bill, if it doesn't have a lot of bags, that thing will not move ahead. Unfortunately, like he said, we've bequeathed our right to a wrong set of people who has gotten to where we sent them and turned their back against us. We can't vote at the state assembly, unfortunately, as citizens. Neither can we vote at National Assembly.
But we can pressure them.
Oh, yeah. What medium do we even have to pressure them? Let's just be frantic. How do we even pressure them? We've created a system that provided too much shame away from us and these people. The moment these people get to power, they become inaccessible. And there's nothing an average citizen is empowered to do about it any longer. We've lost trust in the system, and that is actually unfortunate.
All right, Dr. Salahuddin, how do we fortify INEC offices to guarantee the safety of materials and staff of the electoral umpire?
Security is local. Election is local. Solutions also must be local. And we must localize it, irrespective of whatever sophistry that we want to bring. And the first thing to do, first of all, is to actually bring an all-inclusive approach to ensuring that the people themselves take ownership. You just mentioned something about trust deficit. There is this trust deficit where people no longer see state infrastructure as national assets. INEC office should be regarded as facilities of national importance, and that people within those localities must also protect it. That is one. Two is the fact that there are also some level of state policing that we must put. And of course, there are two different things between state police and state policing. State policing around all of these things must be strong, must be robust, and of course must be very pragmatic. And how do you do that? You must ensure that the people in various localities take ownership and provide some level of oversight around all of those happenings that goes on in those areas. And thirdly, you must actually equip our security agencies. And of course, equipping them means that you must have communication infrastructure that is readily available. Unfortunately, if something is happening in a particular community in Daura, for instance, you are likely not going to be speaking to somebody that is coming from Kankia because you don't have communication gadgets it is difficult for you to be traveling and you have people have communication infrastructure. It is important. You cannot fight modern policing with an analog system. For you to be modern, you must actually migrate all your policing infrastructure to a more digital approach. And that for me is one thing that must also come to the place. And we must also find we must also find a lot of response with how we gather early warning. What is the situation room currently? And how well are we doing with information that we gather? Information is different from intelligence. Okay. Intelligence must be at top notch to be able to respond to some of these early warning that we're actually gathering at the moment.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Salahuddin Hashim, Conflict Advisor, and also Shimei Michael, Executive Director, Dean Initiative. Thank you for joining us on Daily Politics.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also watch us live on YouTube. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.